Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile Cruise with Ronald Assas and myself, Mohammed Abdel here at the Museum of Islamic Arts in the heart of Cairo. You know, dear viewers, Egypt's galleries and museums have reopened starting the 7th of July. Among the venues reopening the plastic arts sector, Mahmoud Mukhtar, Gamal Abdel Nasser and Mustafa Kamel museums in Cairo, in addition to other venues in Cairo and Alexandria. The Cultural Development Fund will reopen the Kulthum Museum located at Ministerial Palace and permanent exhibitions at the Prince Taz Palace in the second phase, scheduled for August the 2nd. The fund will reopen the Naguib Mahfouz Museum in Al-Azhar, Cairo, as Egypt gradually, one by one, slowly but surely, reopens the door to international and domestic tourism in the midst of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. With us here on Nile Cruise is Mr. Emad Hamdy, a tour guide, to talk to us specifically about the beautiful museum where we are in now, and about Egypt, the status of Egypt's tourism at the moment. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamdy.
My
Great pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
And sir, allow me to start by asking you about the new hygiene set of rules that we have taken and the international accreditation and approval that we got from renowned international organizations regarding the safety of and the correct hygiene measures that we are taking here in Egypt at the moment.
Well, this is one of the good procedures that was followed recently by the government, not only in the Islamic Museum but all over Egypt, in all the sightseeings, including the famous places like the pyramids, even the open-air places like the temples in Upper Egypt, in Luxor and Aswan, and also in the museums like this one. They keeping certain measurements for the hygiene and for the physical distancing between the people, and you can see this on the steps right here in this museum.
Indeed. And when we entered here, I mean, they told us to
yes, they
wash our hands.
The precautionary measures here are really strict because they wanted. The guy even came up to me. Why aren't you wearing a mask? I answered, I'm a presenter. I cannot wear a mask. I won't be wearing a mask on TV. So they're very strict here.
Yes, yes, definitely. Not in the Islamic Museum, but wherever you go.
Yes,
And
yeah.
also,
Last week I was at the NAMEC, the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization.
That's
It
right.
was same, and the hygiene was there. The precautionary measures were very high as well. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
And we understand that in beaches as well and tourist resorts.
Everywhere.
There's a floor dedicated to potential would-be patients. There is a residing doctor. There are disinfectants, of course, and all types of medicaments ready for any emergencies, and they take your temperature and stuff like that. Right?
Well, most of the people understand these measurements, why the government is following this in such a pandemic situation. So we have to keep a certain capacity in the hotels and the resorts, not to be proceeded more than 25 or 30%. Same for the flights, same wherever you go. And even in this museum. For example, in the Egyptian Museum, they already approved that in each hour, the visitors in the museum shouldn't be more than 200. So at 200 persons per hour at the capacity in the museums. And the Cairo Museum is a quite big museum. In smaller museums, the capacity will be less, definitely.
Sir, I think in light of the COVID-19, the Grand Egyptian Museum, the inauguration also will be postponed.
Yes, yes.
They're going to postpone.
In the Great Egyptian Museum.
Yes.
The plan was to open
October,
in October
October
2020, but because of the whole situation, not just in the region or in Egypt, but that's where all over the world. So the plan was to invite many people, many presidents from different countries, and because of the pandemic, we decided to postpone the whole event.
Although work is ongoing.
Okay,
Yes.
sir, of course, beach tourism or nowadays is most of the Egyptians go and travel to the north coast because the weather is much better over there.
That's right.
It's expected, of course, to resume as open air and sun are great attractions in the north coast or anywhere that there's beach like Guna, like Hurghada. Of course, looking forward to have a great time in safe open areas, especially in light of the coronavirus. What chances does Egyptian tourism stand now?
Well, we are passing through a hard time, and we have a privilege in this pandemic because there is some people from Egypt. They do decide to travel in the summer in different countries.
From Egypt?
From Egypt.
Yes.
They spend their holidays about in different countries in Europe or the United States. They are about the high class of the society, but because of the situation that we have this year, they are not able to travel, so they definitely or certainly they will travel in Egypt. And this is a quite privilege.
You mean they will stay in Egypt?
They will stay in Egypt because there is no chance to travel wherever.
There is chance, but like Greece, sir, they have to stay 3 days in the hotel. In London, they have to stay for 2 weeks.
It's quite
at
hard
home.
for the people who
So
want to travel.
why should I go and travel?
To enjoy themselves wherever. They don't really will welcome to spend a longer time in the airports on both ways. So it will be much easier and cheaper as well to travel in Egypt, also to explore new places, because I assume that a lot of Egyptians don't know everything in Egypt. There is a lot of national parks, there is a lot of places like the temples, like the famous archaeological places in Egypt. Also recently we explored a lot of tombs in the famous places like in Saqqara, like in the pyramids. In Upper Egypt we found
Luxor.
recently the Asasif in Luxor on the West Bank as well. So we have a lot of places to explore in Egypt. So I think the people will be happy to travel again. If they already traveled before to see the Luxor and Aswan, they will travel much more.
The weather in Luxor and Aswan now, sir, is it okay for Egyptians to go and visit the temples over there, or is it really hot at this time of the
It's
year?
quite warm.
That's
but
that's why we're
because
going.
we don't really have a humidity in Upper Egypt, so in the shade that's fine. But I'm talking about also the next few months. That's coming up from September to December. People, I think they have to decide to travel now for making the booking. So we just on the track, let's say.
Okay. Mr. Hamdi, the beautiful museum we are in now has a lot of beautiful monuments. It comes from different Islamic eras.
Right.
So talk to us about this as a guide. Guide us through.
Well, this is one of the, this is the biggest Islamic museum in the whole world, by the way. We have more than 100,000 pieces of artifacts.
100,000.
Yes, more than 100,000. Gathered from different mosques and complexes and Islamic monuments. Like the wood, the ceramic, ivory, gold, weapons, carpets, different things. So it's also showing the different ages of the Islamic era since the Arab mission in the 7th century and onwards. So we are talking about something start from the 7th century AD, then the time of the Arab mission, then the Fatimid, the Umayyad, and the Umayyad, the Fatimid, then the Abbasid, the Ayyubid era, then the Mamluk and the Ottoman, and the time of the family of Muhammad Ali as well.
So we have everything here.
So we have everything. Yeah.
When did these pieces, sir, or artifacts move into this museum?
Starting from 1902 to 1905. This is the time when the museum was built. Before that, most of the stuff were gathered in a famous mosque in Al-Mu'izz Street called Al-Hakim Ba'amrillah Mosque. It was an Islamic museum for nearly 50 years. Then, starting from the date 1902 to 1905, the government decided to build a new museum to absorb all the Islamic pieces and much more.
Okay, sir, we know that the Egyptian Museum was renovated, and we know that the Namek, which is the National Egyptian Museum for Civilization, was renovated, and this Islamic museum is renovated as well. And of course, we're looking forward to the opening of the great Egyptian Museum. Is this all under the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi? Because I think that the work on all these museums to renovate them together.
Well, there is a plan, a governmental plan to renovate and to open the museums all over Egypt, not just in Cairo, but all over Egypt. We got a good plan for the renovation and the restoration of museums in the governorates in Upper Egypt as well, even the local museums. We got a new plan to build a new museums in Hurghada and in Sharm el-Sheikh. So the people who have their leisure programs and they don't have the chance to come to Cairo or to Luxor and Aswan and looking for the famous stuff, they have the opportunity to cover some of the Egyptian stuff in Hurghada and in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it doesn't really matter to pay more money to travel and spend more days to see the stuff in Cairo or in Luxor and Aswan. So we have this plan already. We got a new plan to renovate the famous museums as well, like the Egyptian Museum in downtown and the Islamic Museum, especially after the big accident in 2014.
Yes,
and
of course. And
most of the glass stuff in this museum, unfortunately.
That's here, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
Egyptian
They nicely renovate most of the Islamic monuments after this big accident in 2014. And now we have one of the most precious and rich Islamic museums all over the world.
I want to stick with the museum we are in now. You mentioned some of the items that are here, and you classified some of them.
Yes.
It was eye-catching to me, or ear-catching to me.
Now you mean?
When he talked about weapons. So, talk to us about the weapons here, for instance.
Weapons is very rich in the Islamic history, especially in Egypt. We are talking about the most museum in the whole world that have many famous collections of these weapons, starting from the early Islamic history, like the swords and the daggers, until the time of the Ottomans. We have the guns during the 16th and 17th century. So it's covering nearly more than 800 years of the Islamic history.
The opening of all these museums, Mr. Emad, the impact of tourism on the opening of, how will this enhance tourism in Egypt after we're opening all these, or we're renovating? Actually, these museums have been here for years. The impact, is the number of tourists increasing?
Yes, the last season, if we don't have really this pandemic that starts roughly by February, we will have the most season ever in the history of the Egyptian tourism.
It was expected in 2020.
We already passed the limit of the 10 billion as a record. Yes, in the history, in the whole history of the Egyptian tourism. But unfortunately, what's happened starting from February.
But sir, it's starting again, because to my knowledge, tourists are starting to go to Hurghada and Sharm el-Sheikh.
Yes, we are talking about the leisure tourism that's coming to Hurghada or to Sharm el-Sheikh or to Marsa Alam or to the North Coast. That makes
we
sense.
have 4 provinces that have been allowed to receive.
But we are talking about
the
main provinces that have the most important and famous stuff in Egypt, like the Cairo, the pyramids. Most of the people, because they don't really have the chance to do this like every year, just people doing this as a lifetime experience. So they don't really have a chance to travel like every short time from their far countries, like people from Canada, United States, from Australia. That's a long trip. So they have to make sure that they will cover every single stuff they need to cover. And I think the pyramids is one of the most important places that the people will love to see. And also
Naturally,
beside the most famous temples and tombs like the Valley of the Kings in Luxor and the Karnak and Luxor
Naturally.
temples as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, so many things are out of our hand. I mean, even if we are ready, the rest of the world has to be ready as well to come here.
Exactly.
Now, Mr. Hamdy, for you personally, the artifacts or the monuments of which Islamic era are more attractive?
The Fatimid,
Okay.
with no thinking.
Yeah.
Because they,
That's when Cairo was founded anyway.
It's very important and it's very unique because it's showing the lifestyle of the people, the unique techniques of art that was followed during that time. It's also the influences of the ancient civilizations. It's very clear in the Fatimid art. Besides that, the Fatimid ruled Egypt for more than 200 years.
Besides that, they founded Cairo anyway.
Right.
Mr. Emad, tell us more about Shara al-Mu'izz and Masjid al-Hakim that's in Shara al-Mu'izz and the monuments over there, and more about it for tourists to know
Many
more.
people don't know that most of the stuff that we can see in this museum
Yes.
were taken over from Al-Mu'izz Street.
Yes,
Because
that's why I
this
was asking you this question.
This is the most busiest area in Cairo filled with Islamic monuments from 5 different ages, starting from the Islamic mission during the 7th century until the time of the Ottomans. So we have more than 100 important monuments in this street for about 2 kilometers, starting from the old gate to the other gate, and in the middle we are covering an area of nearly 2,000 meters long, having more than 100 monuments, mosques, mausoleums, sabils, ancient buildings, houses. So we gathered most of the stuff.
Sir, it's an amazing street. How can we publicize more for this wonderful street that tourists really need to go and visit when they come
it's
to
like an
Egypt?
open museum anyway.
It's not, it's a street.
Yes, but it's an open museum, so people can walk. Or
Yes,
starting
yes.
their walk from the gate,
Yes.
passing through the ancient.
They can walk from Al Hussein.
Yes, Ibn
Mosque.
Hussein, it locates exactly in the middle of the
Yes.
street, but you start your tour from the gate called Al Futuh Gate or the Conquest Gate up to the area of Khan al Khalili, passing through the medieval buildings and the ancient monuments. And people can either to choose to go inside these buildings or to take photos for these buildings from outside. So you have many choices to do, and recently the government successfully renovate and restored all these monuments because it were ignored for many years, unfortunately. And the government decided to restore this place because it's a part of our Islamic history. So if you saw the last season, you can see many hundreds of tourists every day starting their walk from the gate to the Khalil market on both ways.
I know that you personally have a passion for medieval period.
Right.
And personally, Rana, if I had to choose which era to live in, I would have chosen medieval times. Don't ask me why, but that would be my choice. So tell us, I mean, the word medieval, I mean, it's the word itself, it gives an impression that things were, to many people, that, you know, things were not fine, were not okay, like those were the ages of darkness or something like that. But it's really not like this, is it?
It was called the Age of Darkness, but not in Egypt, not in the region, in other places.
Yeah.
Because during that time, I assume that was the highlight of the Muslims. They enjoyed everything during that time. There was the age of the many Islamic inventions. So we have the famous historians, the famous scientists,
Philosophers.
yes, during that time, and their
Chemists,
names recorded
doctors.
in the old sources. So
Doctors.
I think it was on the contrary. It wasn't really at the ages of darkness, but it was age of light.
Why do you
and
like it, both of you?
science as well?
Why do you like it, both of you? Why do you like it? If you see it's the age of darkness, why do you like it?
For me, Mr. Hamdi answered what I couldn't find. He explained to me now why I like it. He said like Muslims were simply at their highest point.
We were superiors.
Yeah,
all over the world. Not by war,
science,
by
What
the
about
way.
the darkness?
by
By
knowledge. By
What about the darkness?
The darkness
was in
was
Europe,
was in
wasn't it?
Europe.
Was in Europe. Okay, sir. Finally, of course, virtual tourism, which has become new form of tourism, emerging due to the health conditions, of course, in our world now. How do you see this, and how can Egypt join this international trend, virtual tourism?
Well, we already start this technique recently on the social media. So we can show the people many places through the social media, the Facebook or the Twitter. So you can open one of these links and you can join a virtual tour in the pyramids or in the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, for example. So people can stay wherever they are, and at the same time they can join a virtual tour through the internet to see the whole places, which considered to be one of the most important stuff.
Just one more question. Kids and school trips and so on, how important, are they coming here often enough in this Islamic museum and other museums? And what do we need to do more to, you know, to engrave the identity and go back to our roots again concerning university and school students specifically?
We can do a lot for the improvement of such programs in the schools. For example, we can arrange as many of these programs in the Egyptian schools, just to tell the little kids how important is their history, how we can make them love their country, to know a lot about the history of Egypt, not just the Islamic history, but the old history as well.
Yeah.
How important was Egypt in this region, and still plays a very important role at the moment.
Absolutely.
Mr. Emad Hamdy, a tour guide, we thank you so much for your informative knowledge. Of course, you've added a lot to our episode today. Thank you very much
Enjoyed
for joining
having you.
us. It was a pleasure having you in today's episode. Dear viewers, you're still watching Nile Cruise on Nile TV. I'm joined with my colleague Mohammed Abdurrahim. I'm Rana Al-Qassas. Stay tuned. We'll be back again.